Hello, good day to y'all. Welcome everybody, new subscribers, the old faithfuls. I appreciate every one of y'all. Thank you for being kind, helping folks out, helping me out. Okay, what I'm doing now is I've got the handle material stabilized, wrapped in this foil. So what I'm gonna do with that, I've got two big packages of it, as I will put that in my oven and I will activate the hardener in it. What that's going to do is that's going to harden all that resin inside that wood, stabilizing it. Then I'll be able to sand it and use it and shape it just like regular wood, except it won't take moisture or air, and it won't move around or separate. So it'll be very stable and it'll be very, very good for the knife handles. So what I'm doing this morning, is I am cleaning up these saw community knives with a 400 grit belt. Now this is a good finish, so what I plan on doing is cleaning them up, putting a satin finish on them. I've got almost 125 knives to make. If I was to put a mirror finish on every one of these knives, this would take me 2 years to do. To get a mirror finish on this knife requires about 8 hours of sanding, hand sanding. Remember, it's not only the bevel, it's the flat on both sides, the spine and the belly, the butt of the knife. The whole knife would have to be polished, minus underneath the handle scale, because you want that rough so the epoxy will have something to hold on to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the next best thing, I think, is I'm going to hand sand these to a 400 to 600 grit, and I think the satin finish will be just fine. They'll be beautiful, and the sanding lines will be different. The edge will have the sanding lines running this way, very, 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 very minute. The flat will have the sanding lines running this way. The grain of the line will be running horizontally. Vertically for the edge, horizontally for the flat of the knife. And these will be cleaned up, and the spine will have a nice polished finish on it. So that's what I'm going to do. And I don't have to wear my respirator today. I'm not removing hardly any material whatsoever. All I'm doing is removing the scratches. So now if I was going to sit here and do a plunge cut and profile grind and shaping, yes, I'd have to wear a respirator because I'm removing a lot of unsafe material. The material I'm removing from this knife, you can basically measure it in thousands. So I would have to probably do this 10 hours a day, 6 days a week for 50 years, if it even then would affect me. Some people will disagree, some people will agree. That's your choice. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean up the flats. I'll clean up the flats, and then I'll go to the profiles. I've got one set up in my jig for that. All right, I'll do one, and then I'll pause it, and I'll show you what it looks like in the end. This is all handwork. It's very important that you keep your fingers off this belt. It's also very important that you orient the knife so if something happens, this doesn't stick you. A lot of knife makers have died doing this. You got to be careful how you orient the knife against the belt. Very, very little. Doesn't require a lot of pressure. All you're doing is just removing some scratches. That's all we're doing. Okay. What I've done here is now on my flat, you can see that these sanding lines are horizontal, or vertical, excuse me. I'll do all of it vertical, but when I take it over to the bench, I will change these to horizontal by hand sanding with a sanding block. All this is doing is getting all these scratches out of it, getting it down to one nice, clean, flat plane. It will make my job over there a lot easier. And that's the name of the game. If you're not careful, you can create a lot more work by changing the angle and not even knowing it. It comes with doing it. You get to a point where you can feel it. It's like hollow grinding a blade. These are flat ground. That's my personal favorite because I think it's a stronger edge. I can make a flat ground thin enough where it will have a very, very keen, sharp edge. Won't retain it as long as a flat grind, I don't believe, because of the geometry of the blade. Hollow ground blades make great skinning knives. I've seen most fillet knives I've ever seen are flat ground. Convex ground is probably the strongest. Will retain the edge the longest. So I'm doing it kind of taking the middle road here, the flat grind. So what I want to tell you about is when you're doing this belt is really fine. It's 400. They make them 600, 800. You want to be careful that you don't overheat the steel. If it gets to the point where you cannot hold this with your fingers, you need to quench it in water. Just give it a bath. Keep it cool. Don't overgrind or overheat. You'll ruin the temper in your blade. And then if you get a hot spot, you got to stop what you're doing, reheat treat it. So we don't want to do that. All we want to do is just clean some scratches off. All right, well, let me get to getting. I'll get you back on here and let you see what we're doing. Okay, we've got the knives profiled and finished on the 400 grit belt. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take another 400 grit piece of sandpaper and we're going to make sure we got all the sanding lines in one direction and then check the finish. May go to 600 on this. And then what I'll do is take it back over to the belt grinder and put a Scotch-Brite belt on there. This particular Scotch-Brite belt. And we'll do a Scotch-Brite finish on the bevel. And that should look pretty good. So, with that said, I got some wood coming out of the stabilizing chamber and into the oven. So when it comes out of the oven here in a little bit, I'll include that in the video. So let me get the sand in this, and all I'm doing, I'll take a sanding block like so. It's a walnut sanding block, so I probably shouldn't be using walnut, but it was a scrap piece. As you can see, it's got a defect in it. And I'll open up a pack of 400 grit paper, slide a piece out of there, maybe. Maybe. There we go. I'll just wrap it around our sanding block like such. And this is 400 grit. Now we'll just keep that flat on this surface. We don't want to angle it over and get into the bevel, which it's not going to hurt. It just takes longer to get the scratches out of it. So we'll just start back here. Now remember, our handle will be rounded and be rounded like this. So if we come back just front of the first handle hole, we should be fine. Everything else will be covered up with a handle and we don't have to worry about it. We'll go back and get this file work cleaned up and touch up the thumb jibbing when we're done with the sides. Just find a nice flat spot and just take your time and go over that, getting those sanding marks in the same direction. Every once in a while you'll get it sanded and you think you're done, and you look down and like there, you'll see some pitting, which I'll probably have to back up a grit or two and take care of that, get that out of there, so there's nothing like that in the finish. But it don't take long. And these are sawmill blades. Some of these are chainsaw bars. I think this is a chainsaw bar. And we'll sand and get all the marks out of it. There's still some pitting and stuff in there, so I'll have to probably back up a grit. Let's see. Zoom in for y'all. There we go. Yeah, you can see some of the marks and stuff that I'll probably have to back up with a 220 or something like that right in there. You can see a few right in there, maybe down here. But I'll work on it with this 400, and when I know it won't take it out, I'll back up. So I'll get back with you when I get it done. All right, as you can see, after it come out of the stabilizing chamber, went in the oven, baked for about an hour and 20 minutes. This wood is stabilized now. It is epoxied inside and out. Very durable. Will not take moisture, shrink. Wood's ready to go. Got another batch in there. All I got to do is start up the chamber. We'll get back with you on that. Hello, 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 hello. All right, we got these knives cleaned up, ready to go. Got my initials stamped in one side, the serial number in the other. Okay, now that we've got this done, we're gonna lay them on the bench. We got all the handle material scales slabbed, stabilized. Now we're gonna clean them up. These are probably going to be book match sets. So I'm going to fit this respirator on my face, and I'm going to clean these scales up. I'll bring you back over to the bench, and I'll show you how I match the scales to the particular knives, and we'll start that handle process of marking, cutting, shaping, drilling, whatever it takes to get a handle on these knives. So let me clean them up. I'll bring y'all back. We'll be over at the bench. Awesome.